Okay, so if anybody's got a question in the audience now on the topic of whether or not we should be in the EU, or if there's any grand themes to the EU, do you want to take your mic round? Okay. That gentleman, Mark, is it?
This is a quick response from all the panelists. Could you tell me how you intend to try and make the EU more accountable? And in the case of the UKIP person, would you like to explain how retracting involvement in the EU as a whole you could allow or manage to change like the perception of the EU and its overarching powers?
Okay, and you just want to take the one at the back as well. That's from the original question, I think. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. Hi. Yeah, I asked the original question, and the question was, is there a unifying idea that unites Europe, and is there something that we're building on for Europe? And I feel that you all just managed to push your own agendas very nicely in that little slot I gave you, but it's not the question that I asked. And like, really, if you want students engaging with politics and the politicians that represent them, it would be really nice if you answered their questions. So. Can I have an answer to that, please?
What is the question?
The question is the one there. Like, it's not a very difficult one.
Which is?
The idea, is there a unifying concept that unites Europe? Not what is good about the European Union as it stands at the moment, which is obviously what you can all talk about because it's policy. This is about a greater ideological thread that I'm interested in. Thank you.
Okay, well, the first was a challenge to you, Michael, so if you want to answer that first challenge.
Thank you. I think the question is, what would UKIP achieve by pulling out the EU? Do I understand that correctly?
No,
okay.
It was more in terms of if you choose to detach yourselves from Europe, how do you seek to influence it?
Okay, well, I think that's a very good question, because people ask this all the time. If the UK pulls out of the EU, the scare stories we hear from the other parties are, what influence would we have? What influence would we have? Well, there are 50 countries on earth with a bilateral trade deal with the EU. Every one of them influences the EU in a certain way. I'll give you an example. The European Union likes the metric system, but because they do so much trade with the United States, they now permit measurements in inches and feet. Now, the United States is not a member of the EU, will never be a member of the EU, but has influenced it in that way. Britain is the world's 4th biggest economy. We speak English, which is the global language. You know, we have an advantage as a global trader that other EU members possibly don't, countries like Slovenia and Malta. So if we pulled out of the European Union, we would still be a force they would have to trade with. And we look forward to trade and friendship with them, we just don't want them making our laws. And was there a second question you want me to come in on as well?
No, the second one.
Do you want to answer the second one, or everyone do the first? Then
I'll
do.
answer another candidate, I think. Okay. You don't want to hear much of the same person. Second question, Chris, if you want to start.
I'd like to start a debate with Mike about the degree to which he just wants to leave Britain floating off into the Atlantic completely isolated and unable to draw up standards which are the basis for the single market. We just end up with those standards for example, environmental standards for cars, safety standards for cars being drawn up by people outside the European Union that our manufacturers would have to fall into line. Now, as to the common principles, well, I thought I touched upon these. I mean, there are common binding principles. You read the Lisbon Treaty, it's all sort of enshrined there in the first few pages. It's all motherhood and apple pie. It's the principles of democracy and liberty and rule of law and independent judiciary and freedom. And to that you can add the goals, which are peace, prosperity, sustainability, and again, freedom. Now, to what extent there are different interpretations over how to achieve these goals, and clearly weaknesses, because it is basically an intergovernmental structure. It is 27 governments working together. The European Parliament is a bit like the House of Lords, if you like. It's got reform. It's got the ability to amend legislation, the ability to tackle the budget, but it is not at the heart of the European Union. At the heart of the European Union are governments. What's the other point?
The person
oh yes,
about the unity of the European Union.
Yes, and accountability. Well, the ideal way to make the European Union accountable is to ensure that it has an executive which is directly elected by the people across Europe. Instead, you have a European Commission which is appointed, one person, which is not unlike the American government, if you like. You elect the president and the vice president, but the American government is appointed by the vice president or by the president for a 4-year period. The Commission is appointed, 27 individuals, to do the work of the governments, to do the day-to-day stuff. But I'd like to see them elected. It would be difficult because we have no trans-European media which could allow some of these individuals to be communicated effectively to us. And governments would hate that idea. Because, of course, as soon as you actually elected, say, a European Union President or a European Union Commission, they become more powerful through moral authority than the governments themselves, and governments don't want that. So I think the best thing you can look for is, frankly, just simply to strengthen the role of individual parliaments. In Denmark, in Finland, in the Netherlands, no minister can go to Brussels without having to appear before a specific European committee in their national parliaments to explain what their negotiating position is, and after they've been to do their negotiations, what the end position is and why they changed their position. But it doesn't really make it accountable to us, and it's accountable to parliaments. But frankly, we would never really know what was going on. In fact, even in these countries, these discussions take place behind closed doors. So I don't know an answer to this. As I say, it's when you have governments working together, they tend not to do it in full transparency.
I'm going to have to move on to another topic now, as time is ever pressing. The second question is an economic question, and it's basically, will the British economy be better off in or outside of Europe? I'll start by with Alex back there.
Would it be better in or outside the EU? Is that the question? Well, I don't think it's so much in or outside the EU. To me, it's more. I'm going to sound like a real politician now, I don't need to change the question. But to me, it's more: are we in or outside of the eurozone? Now, there are a number of countries inside the eurozone. I think it's 10 now. And if you look at the effect on some of those economies, particularly Ireland, and the effect of giving up your ability to change your interest rate, your monetary policy, the ability to flex for the market to decide the exchange rate between your currency and other currencies across the world, the effect on the Irish economy has been devastating, absolutely devastating. And when you look at how that economy just across the Irish Sea has declined, I do come to the very swift conclusion that thank goodness the UK never joined the euro when Gordon Brown and Tony Blair were thinking about it in the late 90s. The thing that will drive the British economy out of recession is the free market principle I've talked about, opening markets, deregulation, which is a crucial thing that Conservative MEPs are driving for in the Parliament, but also opening markets outside of the EU as well. So we shouldn't fall into this kind of trade war position where trading blocs across the world tit for tat, put up barriers to trade, which not only damages the UK economy, European economies, but unfortunately will damage very significantly developing country economies and very poor countries, particularly in Africa.